Of course, no worries. Well, everyone looks great. Thank you guys so much for joining us today for the Black Farmers Roundtable, episode 3, talking about the nonprofit scope. Thank you guys for our amazing panelists for coming to join us today. So let me just get started real quick. So, again, thank you everybody and welcome to the Black Farmers Roundtable. I am your host, Adrian Wilson from Feed Our Soul. And today we are going to be diving deep into talking to 3 incredible organizations, nonprofits specifically, and talking about what they're doing for the urban agriculture space, specifically for our Black and Brown communities. So I'm so excited to get started and welcome to our amazing panelists today. Before we get everything on the ball rolling, I wanted to first begin by thanking our incredible sponsors for this roundtable today. Our main sponsor is the California Assembly member, Sydney Kamlager, a representative of the 54th District, which includes the communities of South LA, Culver City, and Westwood. This assembly member is so awesome. She is a champion for agriculture and is currently doing an outreach to develop an urban agriculture initiative to be considered at a statewide level, which is so awesome, things that we absolutely need in our communities. Our second sponsor is the Pico Union Project, a multi-faith cultural center dedicated to the Jewish principle of loving your neighbor as yourself. They have a free farmers market every other Thursday called Vida Sana and are passionate about growing food for their neighbor and neighborhoods. And lastly, we have a sponsor called Ashley Crosswhite. Thank you so much. She is a member of our fellow urban agriculture community here in LA. She is a horticultural therapist and part of the Seeds of Hope farming team. So we want to thank all of our incredible sponsors for their support today. And so I will get right on to it. As I said before, my name is Adrian Wilson. I am the founder and executive chef of Feed Our Soul. What we do is we are a restorative organization that focuses on bringing and teaching our students and community members how to grow and cook their homegrown produce through hydroponic towers. And now, enough about me. I'm going to pass it on to our amazing panelists. First, we'll pass it on to Ali Anderson of Feed Black Futures.
So hello, everyone. Peace. My name is Allie. I use she, her, and hers pronouns. I am the founder of and one of many co-founders of Feed Black Futures. We work with specifically Black mamas and caregivers directly impacted by incarceration. And we believe that we're an abolitionist group. We believe that when we invest in communities, that we don't need to, we can divest from the systems that keep a lot of Black and Brown people in cages and not free. So we have 3 prongs to our work. We buy farm fresh produce from Black and Brown farmers to support Black and Brown food economies and distribute that to Black mamas and caregivers. We partner with Essie Justice Project and New Way of Life Recovery Project. Both organizations focus on Black women, either who have recently been incarcerated and bail them out, or their loved ones are on the inside. So we provide food to those folks. We also assist them in growing their own food. So this morning was spent in the Inland Empire at 2-3 homes that are getting garden installations. So we're building folks' capacity to grow their own food because we know we need to divest from industrial agriculture. And one tiny way of doing that is starting to develop a relationship with the land. We also pay for folks skills building and farmer training programs. And we are slightly moving into the space of working with folks inside detention centers to do work around building gardens and connecting kind of social justice to food justice through farming and gardening. So we work with 25 households, 25 Black households, and that's about 110 people that we get food to on a weekly or bi-monthly basis. And we have about 15 households that we are currently fundraising for to get gardens, either container gardens or raised bed gardens. Yeah, that, and we're paying for some folks farmer trainings at the moment. So that is Feed Black Futures in a nutshell. We're Black femme led, and we believe we must, in order to free ourselves, we must feed ourselves. And that is where that is. Yeah, Feed Black Futures is ever evolving.
Love it.
Ever evolving. Thank you so much. Love it. You're doing such great work.
Amazing.
And we're definitely going to dive into some of the particulars of your project, because I definitely have some questions to get started. But let's continue on with our introductions. Next, we have Isaiah Urth from UrthKynd. Take it away.
Thank you. And yeah, thank you for this space. UrthKynd is a fairly new organization as a nonprofit. It did exist as a socially conscious for-profit for many years when I lived in Oregon, and I was on about 11 acres there. I only farmed a couple of the acres, but it was a wide variety of things, and every time I'd have some abundance, or I should say we, because I got involved with the woofer program and had different friends and volunteers who'd help out. So we'd share that abundance with local food banks and pantries and families, and then sort of began operating as like a kind of a CSA going that route. And when I came back to Los Angeles just over a year ago, I was working in technology as I've been working for a long time, and I love it because I'm helping people, I'm interacting with people, and was working within post-production, so working with very creative people. But you know, there's always, I didn't quite feel fulfilled. And one thing I realized was the nutrient sort of injustice, the injustice of nutrition and food, and just, it had long been on my mind just from being raised here in Leimert Park and South Central and Compton, even in the beach cities when I was growing up. Always had sort of this lack of food and nutrition now that I think back on it. And that just, it really inspired me with the experiences I had homesteading and growing food and learning with other people. It inspired me to start this nonprofit just to, you know, get back involved and do some positive things with community gardens here in Los Angeles. So.
Incredible, yeah. Incredible. So you're an LA born as well. Okay, I think we got a LA crew here. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Isaiah. And so now we'll pass it on to Shantay of the Niles Foundation.
Hi guys, I'm Shantay Walker. It's really nice to be here with all of you guys and to speak with you guys about such an important, this really important subject. I am the founder and CEO of the Niles Foundation. We are also a very, very new foundation. We were founded just a year ago, a little over a year ago. And originally when we started, we were focused on youth entrepreneurship, and we were focused on women's support and women's services. We began with a youth entrepreneurship program that by the end of the program, our youth would have created a pop-up shop. Well, when we got started, COVID-19 hit. And so it just wrecked our world. And we sat down, me and my team, we sat down at the table and we tried to figure out, okay, how can we fulfill what's necessary right now? What's most important? And of course, it was either food, shelter, or water, and cash, obviously. And we couldn't give food, we couldn't give water, we couldn't give affordable housing yet, and we didn't have the cash necessarily, but we did have food. So my team and I, we started figuring out how we could build gardens, how we could create them. And we started with none. Today, we actually have 4. And it turned into a mission for 2020 was that we wanted to have 10 by the end of 2020. Well, we have 4, we may have 5, and we're still pushing for 5 more gardens. But what these gardens do is provide fresh food access for obviously our low and moderate income families, which are our Black and Brown communities. I mean, 1 in 4 individuals can't even pay for food right now. And I couldn't imagine what that might feel like to not be able to put food on the table for yourself. And so I am huge on leadership. I'm huge on solutions and trying to help whatever cause I can. And the greatest cause that we knew we could give was urban agriculture. So we're happy to say with our 4 sites, one of our sites was donated by a family. And so we're going to use that site to harvest food and donate it to families, of course, our Black and Brown communities, because they need it the most. It's just the truth. We have another site that we are super, super proud of, which is Roland Curtis. Some of you guys may be familiar with Roland Curtis. It's right near USD. It originally was a 20-unit building. They tore it down and they built this amazing 140-unit building. And I think Marquise was actually one of the people to help get this building up, and they brought a lot of all the old tenants, and now they have this rooftop that's amazing. And originally it was supposed to be for Zen and for fitness and all these great things. They did nothing with it. So it sat for 2 years. I saw the space and I said, we need to get an urban garden up here. And so we're happy to say that this garden will stretch literally about 2 to 3 blocks on top of the roof, right on the corners of, I believe it's Exposition in Vermont. And it's going to feed or be able to harvest and support 140 families. And that's just one of our units. So what we're trying to do is have at least each one of our sites house at least 100 families. So that's our goal for this year. And we've been fundraising like crazy. And then for next year, we want 20 sites. So this is an ongoing process. And, from there, there's other things, but we're super, super, super excited about the work we've done, the people that we've met, and just to be able to provide long-term solutions, because what we lack in our Black and Brown communities are long-term solutions. We don't need Band-Aids. We don't need, fix it, areas. We need something that's going to sustain us. And there's nothing better than being able to grow your own food. In addition, we're actually going to train the families so that they know how to grow their food and so that their kids know how to grow the food. And so this becomes more of a survival tool rather than just, a solution, again, a long-term solution. So we're really happy about the work that we're doing. And I'm excited about the future as well.
Amazing. Oh my gosh, that's so exciting to hear about your rooftop farm or garden rather, and just what you're doing with the community. You're all doing amazing things. So I definitely want to jump in super quick so that we can get started about some of the questions that you guys brought up. So I know I hear a lot of things about, sharing the abundance and creating more space for access, right? Because as Black and Brown communities, we've discovered that even when we were growing up in Leimert Park, we didn't know that we were living in a food desert, right? And like, we just thought it made sense for us to drive, to Culver City and to Westchester to go to the grocery store. But really, that's really not how it should be, right? And so when we talk about this idea of access and teaching our communities that they do have the power to take the food, to change their food environment and really grow their own food, which is how we create that. So can we talk about that a little bit further about what that access means, how you've seen that change and morph through your programs and working with the community. Let's see, Isaiah, I'll start with you.
That's a really good, deeply resonating question, because like you said, I always knew there was an issue, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I just learned to I guess over time as a kid and as a young adult even, a calorie was a calorie. And when you're not in survival mode, when, for example, I got really into health And a lot of the information out there was just like a calorie is a calorie, you know, your macronutrients, and there was a huge lack of the micronutrients sort of thing. So, you know, you're drinking these shakes and you don't know how to pronounce a lot of the ingredients, but you know that they're supposed to help you work out better. And so there's just a lot of information that needs to be brought to people. So the education piece, the collaborative piece, to me, food sovereignty looks like using the land that we have. Because when I came back, that was one thing I realized that, you know, hey, there's not a lot of land. How do we get the land that is available? How do we interact with government and policymakers and things that I was never really taught. And so it's a journey. It's not like starting a business where you provide the service and, you know, you get paid, and, you know, it's like you're providing something that to me it's generational wealth and self-gentrification. I see even the smaller plots and backyards, if they could just all be utilized as a collaborative effort towards food justice, I think that we can avert a lot of the consequences of our ailing food system and our ailing health system. Because sometimes I just get news being involved in health and researching and aspiring as a health coaching and things like that and wellness. A lot of times people refer people over to me for advice or just for tips and things like that on navigating the whole health pyramid and what they can do holistically to, you know, better themselves, or even just prevent things or optimize their bodies. And so that's something I'm really, really into, but we have a tremendous disconnect from all these industries. And I think it's time for that disconnect in this generation. We have to unite together to change that, because there's very, you know, powerful corporations and people out there who don't want that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
When we say food should be free, or free if you work for it, if you work collaboratively for it, a whole food system, I think from the top down, it just needs to be restructured. Mm-hmm. And then pathways also to Black and Indigenous and people of color for our land access. Because one thing I can tell you with living in rural Oregon, there were instances where I did feel included, but there was a lot, I was the minority. I was literally the 1% in a town of 1,200 people. And it was very hard to build relationships. It was very hard to get, a lot of times the relationships and the mentors that I had and the help came from 50 to 70 miles away from the bigger cities that were more diverse and open. So dealt with a lot of stuff there. And that was just, it really charged me when I came back. It was like, we need to see more Black and brown families and faces in these rural communities where we have 10 to 20 to hundreds of acres of land. You know, because our food system, what we've obviously learned is that it's extremely fragile. Our health system is very fragile, and it's time now more than ever to put a change to it. So
absolutely,
that's my take.
Absolutely, I agree.
It's definitely manipulative too, right? Because as you see trends that happen in health, then they say, oh, one day sugar's good for you, one day butter's bad for you, one day carbs are good, one day they're bad. And it's just like, what is going on? Like, who can
right?
Right? You guys remember the Atkins diet? Like, but when, you know, you talk about really understanding health, right, and really taking that to what does it mean when you are reading labels, when you're at the grocery store? Do you understand the nutrients that your body actually needs? And also understanding that each person's body is different. And so what is good for me, it may not necessarily be good for you. And that's okay, you know, but it's not a cookie cutter system of health. So I truly believe that we have to educate ourselves and our communities about how to dig deeper and learn more about themselves so that they can live a healthy, balanced, and long-lasting lifestyle. The permanent solution is the key. Absolutely. I wanted to talk to you, Allie, because you brought in such a great point there, Isaiah, about land, right? And so, Allie, I know that you're in the IE, so I wanted to know what the difference was in acquiring that land and working there, and then traveling over to South LA and really feeding families all throughout that space. And what do you think the difference is between acquiring land here in LA and land out there?
Yeah, that's interesting, because there's still a fair amount of zoning and Black land loss in the Inland Empire, like zoning issues and land theft and land loss. So we feed families in the LA area and the IE, and that is a very too expansive of a radius, frankly. But what, at least in the IE, folks are able to engage a little bit more differently with food, because there is, more space and less. There's more like access to sun. There's more south facing areas because there are fewer like higher buildings, and there's a lot of opportunities in urban ag and this obviously, doing a lot of hydroponics work, like a lot of ways to make growing space out of nothing. But yeah, it's so interesting, because prior to starting Feed Black Futures, I was farming in Jamaica, and the country, and Corona brought me back. COVID brought me back here. But what was interesting too about farming in Jamaica is also there's very, very few Jamaicans own land. Wow. So there are very few Black owned farms. So there are a lot of Black people working on farms, but very few Black led farms. And something, when I came to start Feed Black Fusion, I was like, I'm going to only buy from Black farmers. And then I was like, oh, that's very hard to do if you're not in the South, and if you're not in the Northeast, and maybe if you're not in like the Bay or like kind of Central California. But there is a dearth of Black farmers for a lot of reasons, a lot of them being like systemic issues because of the USDA and intentional land theft and land loss, and because farming, frankly, is not profitable. It is very hard to make money off of farming. So I know your question is more about land access and land, and all revolution is based on land, which is what Malcolm X said, and like thinking about getting people land for food, for shelter, for being able to make a profit is so important, and is intentionally very challenging for Black folks, especially in California, in Southern California. And that's, there are Black communities here in the IE because of gentrification forced a lot of folks to come east, and that doesn't mean that there's an abundance of growing space. And something that needs to happen on all kind of cylinders is policy work around like land trusts and making it easier for communities to own land cooperatively, and also like making it more profitable to farm, and having the government subsidize farmers like they do in other countries for doing things that sequester carbon and protect watersheds, instead of, how it works in this country is like the biggest profit is when you're the worst to the land and the least regenerative. And then thirdly, also demystifying or undoing some of the racialized trauma that comes when Black people especially think about working with land and on land. And something we do a lot with our families is try to think of the like I think Chris Bolden Newsom says like the land was the scene of the crime for many Black folks, but it wasn't the land that was the oppressor. It was the land that kept us safe. But it needs to, like, you know, everyone needs to be working at all cylinders and all angles, because we both need the space and the access, and also need to want to do it, which is like something like this, like education and roundtables, and these things are all important. But a lot of folks, and rightly so, because of that trauma that lives within us, that the land is like a scary place. And my family is like, what are you doing there? Like, don't do that. so it's like, yeah, it's always inspiring to talk to other farmers and build community, because it's not a place on purpose that we're supposed to feel comfortable in, and it's our land to steward, and it's what Black folks especially and Indigenous folks are owed. Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yes. I hear that in so many ways. People always ask me, they're like, oh, so what do you do? And I'm like, I'm a farmer.
I'm an aspiring farmer.
I work with my hands.
Yeah.
So.
My nails are gonna be dirty.
Yeah. I don't paint them, so
they're soil. They're just soil. Yeah.
Oh man, so many great things to unpack there. But thank you so much for touching on those points about the trauma that comes with Black and Brown communities, with working with the land, and also trying to break through that trauma and let them know that not only is agricultural a profitable industry, but it also can be a career in so many different ways. There's so much technology that's going on right now, especially with food delivery instantly, with CSA boxes, with hydroponics. There's so many different ways how you can enter the agriculture industry without seeming like, this hick that wears overall
right.
and have a hat on, like it's crazy. But thank you so much for bringing that up. And so I wanted to pass it on to Shantay for for just talking more about your rooftop garden, right? Because I will always think, why doesn't California utilize our rooftops more, right? We have the best weather here in the entire nation, and yet we don't seem to utilize that space. So I'm curious to, and especially other people might be curious to learn, like, how you went about starting that project. How did you approach them, and how did you really get them to say, like, yes, let's put a garden on a roof?
Absolutely. So when I started on this mission, I'm going to be honest, like, when you start an organization, when you start out for a project, sometimes you have this vision and this idea of how you think things are going to go or what you would like to see. Well, I had all that, but at the same time, I didn't know how this was going to happen. So, me and my team, we sat down and I started thinking about ways that I could create space. And I started thinking about every possible way that we could get a garden, from traditional to containers to rooftops. And I came across Roland Curtis, and Roland Curtis wasn't the first building that I actually called. I found affordable units because I felt that there was no one more deserving right now of trying to live sustainably than, our LMI communities, again, which are Black and Brown communities, because of so many reasons, systemic racism and, gentrification and all the other things that we shared. But I saw the space, I saw the rooftop, and I called and asked a question. And I said, hey, I introduced myself. I offered what we do. And I said, we would love to turn your rooftop into a rooftop urban agricultural space. And they loved the idea. And they loved the idea so much that after I talked to them, I had got another call from one of their sister partner buildings. And then I ended up getting another call about another sister partner building. So we're actually working with two of the other partners, one in Glendale and one near Southwest College, which we're going to be installing a lot of seasonal fall plants for their for their space, which they're transitional homes, homeless youth who have been on their own for the very first time. And we were just excited. I'm a very non-traditional, very, very unconventional person. I'm a DIY type person. If I get an idea, if I think it's gonna fly, I'm gonna figure out how to do it and I'm gonna move forward. I'm not gonna think about the 1,000 challenges. I'm gonna think about the success. And we were lucky. There was a lot of positive, a lot of positive feedback. We didn't know how it was gonna go. But when I say the view is amazing, it is absolutely gorgeous. You can see UCLA. You can see USC. You can see downtown. You can see all of LA. It's gorgeous. But what we were so excited about was that people are going to access this rooftop. It literally is going to be able to harvest food for 140 families. That's almost unheard of on a rooftop garden. And so we're looking to do that more. It was an idea, and I'm a firm believer that if you believe something and if you have the right motives and the right intentions, and if, you're supposed to walk that way, the doors will open if you walk those steps. Now, there's plenty of challenges, needing donations, needing money, needing to get soil on top of a 5th floor for about 30 yards of soil. That is not easy.
Not easy.
Not to mention, we had to pull out every single piece of dead plant that they had. So it wasn't empty, nice, and complete. We literally had to refurbish the entire space. It was huge. So we had UCLA come out and help us. We had LA Works volunteers come out. We had Playworks come out and help us, and then a lot of volunteers throughout Los Angeles. But we are searching for more rooftops, and I actually had a call today with I believe it's May Gates, who is or Megan Gates, who is the campaign manager with Sydney Campbell-Langer. I actually spoke with her today because I sent out these blast emails about, hey, if you know anyone, let us know. And she reached out and she said, hey, I have, contacts and people that may be interested in, let's, work towards that. So I feel as though, like what Isaiah said, it's really important. And I'm so adamant about this, is that we have all these small units, and that's great. We can all be working towards all these different things like worker bees, but at some point we have to be able to come back to the beehive and work as a team, as a body. And that's the one thing that's missing. And that's what I love about all of you guys right now on this call, and all of the people that I've talked with in the past, is we're trying to create the arms, the legs, the torso, the head, because we're much more effective in greater numbers and working towards the same goal in different areas if that works, rather than working at small units, because that's what we've been lacking most in our Black and Brown communities. Is we've known that there's been issues, and we've known that there are solutions that can be provided, but we would be much more effective if we worked as a complete body. And I'm really grateful, because I can say for the first time in all of my life, being born and raised here in Los Angeles, that I feel that energy. People want to work as a body, and that's what I'm trying to get to. So I'm happy to collaborate and connect and work with our individuals and our citizens and our organizations. And I think that's one of the things that works so well with this rooftop garden, is I was able to work with the Roland Curtis building and talk about what they wanted and talk about what we're offering, and our missions align. So it's also about finding organizations whose missions align, and we're looking for as many rooftops as we can. We'll take anything we can get and create some sort of green space, because at the end of the day, it's about our community thriving, not just surviving.
Absolutely. Yes. Snaps to that.
Yes.
And it's so true when you talk about, building this collective, right? Because as I've started doing more outreach and just more networking, there are a lot of us, really doing the same thing in very, very small micro spaces. And so I wanted to create a space like the Black Farmers Roundtable and other collectives where we can come together and talk about, oh, your project's over there. Oh, I know someone over here, and really make that connection going. Because that's the only way how we're going to continue to grow, is if we help each other. You know, we are all out here fighting for the same thing.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be a competition. You know,
Right.
there's enough people in need for all of us.
Right.
And you can never have too much food. You know, I love
Right.
sharing the abundance. Sharing the abundance is like absolutely what I'm about, because there's plenty for everyone to go around, despite what the outside sources may think that
Right.
there is a lack, right? But there is not a lack. There is plenty of everything to go around.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
thank you guys so much for talking about that. And I wanted to jump into about starting your nonprofits. All right, because I know that as you said, Shantay, there are so many younger generations now that are really, really getting into gardening. They're getting into, you know, the food justice system and figuring out how we can fix this issue. So I wanted to talk to you guys about, and maybe just briefly start about like why you decided to go to the nonprofit route, and if there were any challenges or any advice that you can give someone who wanted to start their own nonprofit. I'll start with Allie.
So I really, really appreciate this question, because it is something that I wish I would have heard and been discussed, because nonprofits aren't inherently good. And frankly, that's actually, Feed Black Futures is fiscally sponsored by a nonprofit. We are a project of a nonprofit. So we are not technically a nonprofit, but we are, you know, when folks donate, they donate to our fiscal sponsor, and then they just put like Feed Black Futures, which is intentional, because we don't, the folks who started this work are really skeptical of nonprofits, and a few of us have worked in them. And we just wanted to buy some time to figure out if nonprofit life was for us, because we think about, like, a lot of times our politics are really aligned with like worker cooperative movements. And we just kind of wanted to see what avenue made the most sense and did the least amount of harm. And I realized there will be harm everywhere. And now, having like been in this space, I get how our nonprofit tax structure can be really limiting and exists for folks who have capital, because they have to you can only earn so much money, and you can only pay your staff so much money legally. And that's probably the direction we'll go down once we become a bit more established. You know, we started a fundraiser in June and got $90,000 within a few weeks. And there was a lot of energy for Black food sovereignty, for abolition, that which is helped us kind of be like, oh, there is a place for us in the market. But yeah, nonprofits exist to fill a hole that the state should technically provide. And Black people, food should be free or accessible to everyone. So ideally we won't exist in theory. Like we shouldn't have to exist. And thinking about that will, you know, we kind of exist to one day not exist, because everyone will be growing their own food. Everyone will have access to food. We won't have to think, oh, do I pay my electric bill or do I buy organic carrots? Sometimes the same price. But yeah, it's something that, you know, nonprofit world has been kinder to some of us who've been in this Feed Black Futures and then others. And it sounds so great and altruistic. And you know, I worked in nonprofits that have had to pay their Black and brown staff not a lot, because that's how they had to exist. And I get why that is. So it's a complex question and probably not the best answer, but it's a authentic one, because I feel very ambivalent. I feel very on both sides sometimes of like, should we go down this road? Why is it helpful? How are we being harmful sometimes? And, you know, people donating and getting tax write-offs is important and is what keeps things alive. So I'm like, I don't know if I'd be like, it's a necessary evil, but it's like, it's a place that exists because there's gaps in the state providing it to folks. So it's unfortunate that, you know, all of us have to, it's like beautiful that we all get to work in this world, but it's unfortunate that we have to, because there is no food sovereignty. And, you know, I'm going to work hopefully my whole life to work to, you know, in that avenue, and maybe we'll see, you know, needles change. But yeah, so we are a project of a nonprofit and are in the process of figuring out if that is the direction we go in. Yeah.
Yes. And I love that, because that is such a great place to start. I didn't know anything about fiscal sponsorship when I started Feed Our Soul, and I wish that I had, because that is a great way how you can get the funding that you need, and also pay people fairly, but also not adhere to some of the rules that a 501c3 and tax requirements and the IRS will require of you once you're submitting those documents. But yeah, I wanted to then talk, because I know Shantay and Isaiah as well, you guys are new nonprofits. So I wanted to talk about like your choice and decision in starting that. Shantay, do you want to start first?
Yeah, sure. So it's really funny hearing Allie's experience, because I felt like in the nonprofit sector, I've experienced a little bit different. I've probably in my past worked with maybe 3 different nonprofits, and they were all really positive. So I have this positive association to nonprofits, and mainly because I had worked in every industry there was. I mean, before I started my nonprofit, I worked in luxury, entertainment, real estate, you name it. And so I had, you know, I gotten my master's in psychology of leadership development, and I said, okay, I'm not meant to work for someone else. I just knew that. I knew that growing up. And, you know, I'm going to go a little bit further than that. See, I grew up on Normandy and Vernon. So, you know, if we have listeners out there, and obviously you guys know, Normandy and Vernon wasn't a very, you know, thriving, beautiful neighborhood when I grew up. You know, I had fun. I had a beautiful childhood, but there were things missing. And this goes back to kind of what Isaiah said earlier, is I went to school in the Valley. So I lived in one area, then went to school in the Valley. And I started making these connections and disconnections between where I lived and where my friends lived and my education, wondering why I didn't have this and why I had this. I didn't grow up on a farm. I didn't grow up on a garden. But what really brought it home for me in creating a nonprofit is what Ali did say, is that, you know, there are these things that are happening in our society, and they aren't taking care of those issues. They aren't dealing with them. And so someone has to stand up and say, okay, raise my hand. I'm going to do it, you know, and I associated that work with nonprofit because all the for-profit connections I had were terrible. So I kind of had the opposite of Ali. I worked for all these big corporations, all these fancy organizations, and they were terrible when it came to leadership. They were very poor on leadership. There were all these biases. Women made less, minorities made less. You know, if you knew the person, you got a promotion. There were all these other, you know, layers and aspects that I just frankly didn't have the energy and time to deal with. And so I had a very, very exciting and pleasant experience in, you know, forming this corporation. I wavered between, you know, how I was going to get the paperwork done, what I was going to have to pay, what I was going to do. And by the grace of God, and I'm so grateful, it only took me 2 weeks to get all my paperwork done, 501c3 verified by the state of California. And I don't even think that's heard of. So I felt for me, I was walking the right direction, because for me, it's about purpose. A lot of this is about purpose for me. I'm originally a musician. That's you know, background. I'm singing across Los Angeles and performing and, you know, doing the things that I love. But being in this nonprofit and building this nonprofit is something that I love. And I have such a fulfilling, you know, I feel like my heart is full when I'm done at the end of the day, because I know the work that I did is good. Now, don't get me wrong, because the donations are slow, they take time, it's a lot of work, and, you know, there's a lot of tape to go through. And so after I got my, you know, my verified 501c3 IRS confirmation letter, I started doing the legwork, and I started connecting to people, and I started making moves, and I started, you know, figuring out, okay, how this is going to evolve. So I did not get $90,000. Ali, I would love to figure out how to do that. So let's talk. You know, I'm still waiting on donations. But our community has been amazing. Like, our community and our individual donators have been our greatest support. They have really believed in what it is we were trying to do, which is create food sovereignty, which is decrease food insecurities, which is provide fresh food access, to close the gap on our deserts. That's, you know, one of the reasons why I was like, okay, let's start with 10, because I do know what's on the corners of Vernon and King and Vermont and Normandy and Western and Crenshaw. I know what's on those corners, and they aren't the Trader Joe's that's down the street from me. They aren't the Whole Foods. They aren't the Gelsons. I mean, let's get real. They aren't those streets. So what are they eating? And then, like, again, you know, our diet and our health. And so, yeah, we're gonna have poor eating habits if we have to travel really far to get to our grocery stores. So for me, creating a nonprofit was huge, because all the associations that I did have towards greatness were nonprofits. You know, there's some organizations out there like Southwest who I kind of modeled a lot of my leadership after, because even though they're not a nonprofit, they built their entire, you know, model off of servant leadership. And that's what I feel like. I feel like the leadership that we are trying to provide as a nonprofit is servant leadership. I'm not worried about where I'm trying to get to. I am focused on how we're going to try to get to where you want to go. And that is to not have to worry about our bills, to be able to grow food. It's not going to wipe away everyone's need for certain things, but it will definitely support and help us in the direction that we're going, so we don't have to waver. We can actually feel comfortable making decisions about what we want to eat and pay our bills. You know, how about that? Really? What an idea, right? What a concept to not feel so bad about the decisions we make. And I want families to feel that, because I grew up in that. And so I don't have to worry about that now. But my mission and the mission for our nonprofit is to bring that back to our communities, because at one point in our lives, before things were burned down, before they were torn down, before, you know, all of these other layers had risen, was we did have some sort of comfort at some point, and we're trying to get back to that. And so the nonprofit has helped us, because we do receive a lot of very, very positive association, and people want to help even more because we are a 501c3 corporation. We started that way and we are this now, but again, it's only a year. So we'll see what in 5 years I'm saying. I might be like, all right, I'm done with this. No, but I really do believe that the work that we're doing is good. And I think that we get more love shown to us because we are a nonprofit and a 501c3, because we do have a lot of for-profit organizations out there, but it's been a really positive ride so far. So we want to keep it that way.
Yes, I hear you. Isaiah, do you have a comment about starting your nonprofit and why?
Okay,
Yeah.
so, that's for Isaiah, right?
Sorry. No, go ahead.
Okay,
finish.
sorry.
No, you want to finish? So for me, I can resonate with everyone else's experiences from having positive associations with nonprofits growing up, like Venice Children's Circle, Parents of Watts, Watts Star Cinema, and being involved with making the daily calls, trying to assist with the websites, in a technical capacity, and then also working in music and in the creative side as a sound engineer and stuff. So I can resonate really with all of that. And when I fell into farming, because I definitely wanted to grow food, you know, for my family and stuff, and for my community, and I wanted to eat healthy without breaking the bank. One of the things that greatly helped us was we actually had a neighbor who was an older farmer guy, and he was towards the end of his career, and he gave us a herd of pigs, which were really good because it was a small plot and I had no heavy equipment. And so the pigs were amazing as part of the collaborative ecosystem of animals and diversity to feed the soil, to till the soil lightly, and then establishing that whole rotation. And it just became this amazing experience that I learned just starting from the ground up. And this one mentor that I had one day told me, he was telling me in 2012, around the first year I was there, about CBD hemp and the power of it. And he said, you know, if you could grow that like you guys are growing fruits and vegetables, then, you know, you could do really well, you know, in terms of helping people and reaching out to more people and working, having an income stream with it. And so we looked at the legalities and with the state and became certified. And that was another thing that I became really passionate about, because again, that industry was one of the few industries that were really, I mean, in terms of farming in my community, other farms, it was really hard to reach out to them, even an organic farm, getting help, you know, saying, hey, maybe you can offer us some tips, you know. One of the biggest organic farms in that county was right down the street. And they said to me, you know, you're late to the party, good luck. We know who you are. You're those boys that came from California, you know, those people who came from California. And it was just like, wow, what about collaboration? You know, what about, you know, doing this as a community, because there's so many people who can't afford organic food. And they're 2 miles away from where I was. And so if we could get them out here farming, because our biggest thing was, yeah, we need donations, we need money, but this land needs to be revamped. We need to take this desolate land and at the most cost-effective way possible, make it fertile again. And so opening up with CBD hemp, getting that license, learning and sort of not mastering it, because you're always learning. Every plant is just so amazing. You just dive into this depth of this new world. It's like they all have, my friend, my herbalist on our board, Artie always says that plants have souls. And the more and more I'm getting more into the esoterics of it, the biodynamics of it, that's the more I understand. And so the farm was really functioning, although it was small, as a nonprofit, a social benefit sort of company, although I didn't really know what to call it. And so, yeah, I just put 2 and 2 together and I said, yeah, let's, you know, I want to try the nonprofit model, but also the for-profit model, because in essence, before the nonprofit existed, the for-profit model with the CBD hemp and working with local dispensaries and, you know, and the fact that we could be legal and do that, it was a great privilege that only few communities really have. And the communities that I began to realize this, the ones that really have it, the most freedom to grow, are communities that have historically been privileged, you know, which are, you know, white communities. But also within those communities, there's a lot of starvation. Like you can be surrounded by farms, and in your rural communities, there's forgotten, you know, that there's so many people starving and foster families and things like that. And it was just baffling to me to see that correlation between health and food and farming and nutrition, where, you know, in Oregon, rural Oregon, being surrounded literally by all types of farms, not many organic, but there were a lot more in a 50-mile radius that were more organic, but having access to all that food, even being able to walk on the farm and pick as much as you want and go home and can it for the winter, and learning all these skills. but people were still sick. It had one of the highest rates of cancer, diabetes, autoimmune conditions, things like that. And so that correlation it really weighed on me. And so I'm still in the beginning phases. I'm certified or registered through California, state of California, as a nonprofit and a for-profit. But to take a deeper dive into it, I attended Mockingbird Analytics has a nonprofit incubator program. Nice. And it's really helped me. So I'm getting caught up on that. And I'm thinking more of a symbiosis of a nonprofit and maybe a B Corp or some certified B Corporation, something like that, because I want something that is that's democratic and that's it uses like holacracy, sort of an open system where the community has control over the decisions and the trajectory, but at the same time, something that has a profit model, because that's necessary in this system to stay regenerative. So, yeah.
Oh man, I love this. I love that there are 3 different ways and models that we are using so that we can contribute to the community. Bless you. And I do encourage people to research about, just the backgrounds of what the state requires, what it means to be a 501c3 compared to a C Corp, compared to a B Corp. Like really look at that while you're figuring out what your project needs best. And don't just say, I want a nonprofit because I can get free money and it's donations. Like it's much harder than what it seems, and there are a lot of nonprofits out there that fail, and the point is for you to really have a project in mind and go in with that project, make a budget, and then execute it. And so my advice to those people would be to start small. Start with something that that you can achieve. Get a team of very strong volunteers who believe in your mission and believe in what you're doing. And then just start with one project. And then if it continues, whether it's farming and you're feeding people through a CSA program, whether you're installing gardens, whether you're teaching educational workshops, pick one avenue for you to do the work that you think is the most important, and then expand from there. That is what I will say about that. So thank you, everyone. I love this conversation, but I know that it is rounding in on our hour. So I wanted to end it on one note, and then we do have a couple questions in the Q&A box, so I want to get to those as well. But the last thing I wanted to talk about was, as a BIPOC, I don't know what that is. I don't know if I'm saying that right. But as a Black and Brown owned organization, what are 3 things that you can encourage communities to do today in order to encourage farming, in order to encourage health and wellness? What are 3 things you can do, whether it's reading a book, or whether it's, starting with an herb garden, or maybe it's, looking into food cooperatives. What are 3 things that people can do leaving today right now that can contribute to our food justice system? I will start with Shante.
Awesome. I love that question. I had to think about that for a second, because, I know that everybody learns so differently, and, everybody have their own ways of doing things. But the one thing that I can encourage is don't be afraid to DIY. Don't be afraid to do it yourself. Mm-hmm. Failing is how we've got some of the greatest leaderships that we have, leaders today. And in fact, most leaders who are great will tell you that they failed about 5 or 6 times before they got to where they're going. So don't be afraid to do it yourself. And what that means is, if you have to start your own garden on your balcony, or if you want to start in a container, don't be afraid and do your research. We have this wonderful thing called the internet and this wonderful search engine called Google. And if you put anything in there, everything will pop up. And I'm gonna be honest, that's how I found out a lot of my information, because we have technology available, but research is really important. Doing it yourself, look up ways to do it yourself, and then look for people who are actually doing what you're doing. You know, don't be afraid to get advice. Don't be afraid to talk about what it is that you're trying to accomplish, because people, believe it or not, do have some really great advice to give. So talk to people to get advice, reach out for people who are doing what you want to do. You know, don't be afraid to research some DIY, do it yourself, fail, because at one point you'll get it, right? It'll come eventually. And then of course, do your research. And have fun. Whatever it is that you're trying to create or do, have fun, because it really makes all the world of a difference. And you'll appreciate the outcomes a whole lot more.
Absolutely. Yes. Isaiah, do you have a comment or thought? 3 things that people can do today.
Yeah, that definitely resonates with me. I would say the first thing is grow where you are. Wherever you are, however you can, just get started. You know, if you have to buy a bag of soil, or, you know, maybe you have hard soil, maybe it's clay soil, you know, check it out. Do research, you know, how can I improve this soil, and just start learning any way you can and put it into motion. Another thing is collaborate, involve other people, look into community seed banks and saving your own seed, look into seed swaps. Collaboration is huge. If there's someone in your community who's doing this, support them, lift them up, and take charge, take leadership as well, because everyone has sort of a network to tap into. And if everyone sort of kind of has their own pillars, I feel like it's a lot easier to collaborate when more people are doing this and accomplish that final objective of like Ari said, working ourselves out of a job, which is huge. That would be just a monumental accomplishment. And then the last one is find an organization that resonates with you, and join it and participate. Or find numerous ones, because there's tremendous power in collaboration, and just by searching and seeking it out. And I've had to build a lot of this on the side while still working in tech. So that's kind of been a challenge, is not really being able to dedicate as much of my time to it to really drive the projects that I've envisioned. But we have the land, we have access to, you know, a lot of land here and in the Delta, and of course in Oregon, that, you know, we want to offer up and that we want to use for collaborative projects. And so, yeah, collaboration is huge. And also, we actually have an abundance of seeds through a seed drive that we did with the Cooperative Gardens Commission around March. And that was really a collective of, you know, conscious people who got together and joined this organization to get seeds and establish community seed banks. So we do have a small but hopefully growing seed bank, and we hope to do some collaborative efforts on seed saving as well. So I just wanted to offer that up as well, because we're still trying to repackage and get those, get some seeds, you know, donated out there too. So.
Yes, that's incredible. We were talking about Seed Valley.
Yeah, these are so political and important. Yeah.
All right, Allie, do you have 3 things that people can do today?
Well, I didn't prepare, but I have 2 books that are always on my desk. Farming While Black.
Nice. Yes.
Yeah, which
I like that.
Yeah, it's so amazing. And I was part of one of Soulfire's immersion programs when I was living in New York, and it really changed the game for me, and thinking about land work as being really liberatory. And I also have Freedom Farmers, which is another great book, a little bit more like there's a lot of great, there's like the Black agrarian tradition is really rich and is the reason there is food growing here, like Black and Indigenous agrarian tradition. And there is a wealth of information that is out there about why, like how our ancestors braided seeds into our hair when they were coming across the Atlantic. How the South Carolina rice economy was because of Indigenous knowledge, why George Washington Carver was like, oh, we need to give cotton a break in order to maintain the health of our soil. So we planted peanuts and nitrogen fixers. So one of them is know the history, because you now will kind of see it now as like not a duty because that makes it seem obligatory, but it's like, oh, all of our ancestors were farmers. However far back you trace it. And it's a way of healing when you interact with the land, and a way of connecting with the people in your past and yourself. So know your history. I would also say, like, talk to your farmer, go to your farmer's market, and build a relationship and figure out, I am guilty of this, going to farmers markets, picking up things, going to like stands that are prettier, and but really just like talking to farmers about what it is they're doing, thinking about like policy, like the farm bill, which congressperson should I call, like how will this help you, but like really engaging with your farmer, which is again, Booker T. Watley out of Tuskegee was like, let's do CSA programs and let's get farm to table, which is another like, yay, Black people have been doing this since jump. And like even pick your own is like going to an apple orchard is like of the Black agrarian tradition, like pick your own. So know your history, talk to your farmer, and find another person that looks like you and has similar identity to be in community with, because this world can be a little isolating. Farming in itself is like very, it's you and the land and maybe one or two other people. But yeah, find someone who you resonate with, who is doing this, because it'll keep you going. So yeah, and that's how I found you, Adrienne. Just on social media, and we're like, oh yeah, this is important. It's important to find people who you have similarities with and can vibe with, because it can feel like you're out here alone, but you're not alone. Yeah, we are.
That's right.
People that are here. Yes. Oh my God. Thank you guys so much. It's incredible. I do have one question in the queue, which seems pretty specific, but hopefully that we can clarify this for everyone. So it says, if you want to comment on the USDA efforts that they're doing in terms of providing all these grants and providing these, CSA boxes and these distribution centers since the hit of the COVID-19, and also possibly discuss the kinds of resources that your particular organization is looking to receive from an institution like the USDA. So I'd see, I'm going to go back around and go to Allie.
So is the question, how should we engage with the USDA, or what's the?
I think it's what kind of resources are you wishing to receive from institutions like the USDA?
Yeah. Right. The USDA has been doing a lot in terms of like pushing a lot of resources to Black farmers recently, especially folks impacted by COVID. Mm-hmm. I would still like to see more of that. And also a lot of, and this person can maybe correct me, but a lot of USDA funding comes retroactively. So you apply for the grant, you do the activities, and then you get the funds. So you kind of already have to have funds to get funds. That might not be this exact thing, but that's how a lot of government grants work in general. And that means that funds are only for folks who can do it, who already have a tractor, who already have something. So maybe proactive or prospective funding would be awesome. And yeah, deliverables that are a little, that have fewer strings attached to them would be wonderful. And maybe that already exists and I just haven't found that yet. Which is a possibility, a huge one. Yeah.
You're right. Let's see, Shante, do you have any thoughts about?
Yeah, I second that, Allie. I do. I hear you. I believe that our grants are really hard to get to a lot of the times. It's a lot of red tape. And to think when writing a grant, to think about the organizations who may not have those resources just yet or that amount, to think about advancements rather than retroactive, because it's a lot more helpful, especially when, you know, an organization's working off of limited income or donations. So absolutely. And I would like to see more grants. So for USDA, if you're out there listening, we would like to see more grants for our Black and Brown communities, rural and urban. And two, for them to be advancements rather than retroactive, and to resonate with the cities that really, really need it the most. You know, I think I've only really seen one grant that focused on food deserts from the USDA, and you know, we need more of those. I've probably only seen one of those in the last 2-3 years, so I would love to see more of those, because those are relative to our environments. And I think when the USDA makes a grant, it isn't necessarily relative to our communities. It's more like general. So making them a lot more relative to our living communities and areas, that would be a lot more helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. All right, Isaiah, do you have a final comment?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question, because there's so much work to be done. And really the bottom line that all of this work equates to is improving the wellness outcomes and having healthier conscious communities and healthier bodies that can resist this toxic load that we're burdened with. You know, and I think when we look at food, starting with the soil and starting with the microbes as a truly living something that just embodies all these organisms coming together to create something from a tiny seed. And when people learn about the amazingness of just the miraculousness of the roots and what more of the unseen and what goes on under the soil and the magic, truly the magic behind it all, I mean, that I think is a true awakening. In addition to the sovereignty behind it, and saving money and just being more fulfilled. So I'd love to see more programs that really foster the education and really the esoteric knowledge behind it, the indigenous farming methods, the cosmic, you know, methods, and structuring just stronger communities, and maybe, you know, things like competitions. And I'd like to see homeowners and landowners who have an abundance of land, maybe that they're not using, let's say for the next 2 years, 4 years, instead of maybe they're not going to develop on it just yet, but it's a sizable parcel of land. Like I see it a lot around all down Slauson, all, you know, west, all along Florence now. I mean, with the retail apocalypse and things that are happening with the economy, I think we're going to see more and more of this. And those can really be structures of positivity and of beauty and of safety in our communities. And we have this generation of children who, you know, and young adults who need a purpose and are missing out on a lot of that because of how our education system is being restructured now. And so we had it pretty hard coming up as youth. I only worry now, I really worry about the youth now. And I feel like connecting with nature is one of the greatest things we can do, because there's a huge disconnect. One of the final things with the USDA, when I was involved with the CBD hemp and providing that to, patients who had cancer, who were experiencing epilepsy, and just all kinds of inflammatory conditions, and seeing it help, and also seeing the just what it did for the animals, what it can do to regenerate and repair the soils. I mean, all the different fabrics and textiles that could be made out of it, replacing it, with cotton. I mean, replacing cotton with it. They say a cotton t-shirt costs, I think, something like 2,000 gallons of soil to produce, of water to produce one t-shirt. I might be slightly off, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And when I go to Mississippi and I drive through those old fields, not only what resonates with me is the destruction of the earth and the planetary things that occurred, but also, of course, the generational trauma that my ancestors went through. And so realizing the power that what we have, and we shouldn't be locked out of the hemp industry. It's been decriminalized for the most part, agricultural hemp with no THC in it. The DEA, I believe, has referred the regulation of that to the USDA. In Oregon, more privileged communities can pay $1,000 and grow as much as they possibly want on the acreage of land. We have land there that's available for this, for educational programs and for community resiliency, for growing our own products, our own beauty products, and getting away from this toxic system. So I'd love to see the USDA including the BIPOC community in this in terms of education. And we got tons of seeds and people who want to help out with that as well. So that was a really good question. Thank you.
Yes, I like that.
Absolutely. All your answers were incredible. And I know that we're a little over, so thank you everyone for staying on and listening to our conversation. Thank you to our amazing panelists. You guys are awesome. You're doing wonderful things. And I just want to give a shout out to Alan Curry. I see all of your messages in the chat, and I will make sure that everyone gets all of your information so that we can work together so that we can continue moving forward and fighting the good fight. And so just as a quick last ender here, here is everyone's Instagram handle. And as you saw before, we do have had their websites up. So I would just encourage everyone to look them up, check them out, see what they're doing. They're doing amazing, incredible projects here in South LA and all over Southern California, as you heard today. So reach out. If you have time, I would say volunteer. If you have money, I would say donate. If you don't, figure out how you can contribute to these organizations, because they're all doing incredible things, and we're all fighting for the same thing so that we can work our way out of this job. I love that quote so much. I really, really do. And just again, just a special thank you to our sponsors, Assembly Member Sydney Blogger of District 45, as well as Pico Union Project and Ashley Crosswhite. Thank you again for joining us for this edition of the Black Farmers Roundtable. And I hope you guys have a safe and healthy holiday, and we will be in touch soon. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Erin. Such an honor.
Thank you. It's nice meeting all you guys.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.